has to take the knight on f3 and castle himself. And Lucy is +1 in this position. Despite being a 1,700-point underdog, she's +1 in this position. That's very impressive. Now, how do you actually capitalize on such an advantage when the position is so locked? Well, for example, a horrible move by white here would be to take on d5. Why? Why is this so bad? Because black can recapture with either the c-pawn and knight c6, or even this. And even though you have a bishop, this is called biting on granite. 3 pawns in a row means the bishop is completely useless. What white should do, if white does anything, is play the top computer move, which is e5, kicking the knight out of the middle, and following it up with d4. And Lucy did that. Like, if you can gain space in a position for absolutely nothing and block out your opponent's only good bishop, which is exactly what white does, this is very good. White now has a pawn space advantage, and oftentimes a space advantage will lead to some sort of attack on the opponent, right? So you'll rotate the knight this way. Now you'll say, well, Levy, but this bishop is still biting on granite. Correct. Absolutely. However, black, in any locked position, you must evaluate where the pawn breaks are for counterplay, and black's pawn breaks are c5 and f6. And both of those moves weaken a light squared pawn. So this weakens this drastically weakens that, which means it's just completely not guarded anymore. But you have no way to get into the position at all until you play the move c5. And that's exactly what happens here. c5 is a very decent move. Now, white, in a perfect world, is able to regroup and defend the center with a pawn. If you can defend the center with a pawn, you're going to be in good shape. However, like I always like to say, all pawn moves, especially pawn trades, change the position a lot. This trade opens up the c-file for both players, and it allows black to immediately go after this newly weakened pawn, which now can only be defended by a pawn, which can't be defended anymore by white's pawns. So we have a big pawn structure battle. It's actually better for white to take on c5, and if knight takes on c5, to develop the bishop with a tempo. Because like I said, this pawn is now softening up. So bishop here, let's say black plays something like this, and now what white will do is very slowly build up the queen side and try to kick that knight out completely. If you just rush in with the move b4, it's not necessarily a bad move, but it really weakens the c-file. So you're going to see b4 later in the game. This looks good, right, to kick the knight out. But when you push that pawn, the c-file is now very weak. And black will immediately swoop in and start putting some serious pressure on it. But the game, the game is going to continue here as such. The alternative here for white is to not take on c5 and not take with one of these pieces. The better way to land something here is either a pawn or a knight. So white should consider the move knight e2. So if cd4, knight d4, and the knight does a nice job controlling this and maybe threatening to go on a little excursion. When you do this with the bishop, see, Lucy does this with the bishop, this is not bad for white necessarily, but it's not good for white. It's allowing black to now get rid of the bishop pair and send the game into a position where black has potentially equalized. So that is why when c5 comes, you either take it completely and don't allow any of your pieces to go to d4 and be a target for this knight, or you do let one of your pieces go to d4, but it has to be a knight, because if knight c6 happens, you can take, you can also just go for a position that looks like this, and you're completely keeping this bishop out of the game. So an interesting jostling battle here. Lucy plays bishop e3. All right, she defends instead of taking, and black plays knight c6. By the way, I personally would just get out of the middle here. I would just not allow black to get my bishop. And then I would maybe go knight b5. So let's say white stops, black stops that, right? Doesn't let me go here. I might go knight e2. And again, we talked about this bishop, right? At some point in the future, like let's just give me a couple of moves. I might try to go for c4. I might try to break open my bishops and then look at this. I mean, now we're talking, right? This is really serious. So a long time ago, I told you about the move c5. This wall is really nice for black, but in any closed position, there are pawn breaks, and pawn breaks come with consequences, some of which mean you destabilize your position. But okay, Lucy plays the move a3 here. This, I don't necessarily like for white, but I don't hate it for an 1100 move. It's not a blunder. by any stretch of the imagination, but it's also kind of a do-nothing move because knight b4 is not really, right, it's not really coming. You want to try to make progress in positions as much as possible. So even if that means sliding the queen up one square, right, and just connecting the rooks, I like that. a3 is fine. We have a trade and black plays queen b6. This is an interesting idea by black to try to trade off, obviously, white's powerful piece. You'll also notice that white has not made any progress in activating this bishop. Why? Because the move c4 is not possible. Right? So, and since c4 is not possible, where is the only semi-open file on the board? The c file, right? So black is going to not allow those pieces to move, and black's next move is going to be rook ac8, or maybe rook even fc8, because this rook's not doing too much. And the pawn break f6 is coming. So if white is not careful, f6 will come, and this bishop is now going to get active in the game too. That's really bad for white, because right now that bishop's gone. We don't have to worry about that bishop, but one pawn break, and that's really what it comes down to at 2800 level. Trading white's active queen, right, improving the position, trying to get into c4, and now is where finally Lucy makes a mistake. Right? She tries to expand on the queen side with the move b4. What does that do? It destabilizes two pieces, and black punishes it immediately and goes with the f rook instead of the a rook, because I think he wants to bring his bishop back this way. So the bishop can't get in the game, and there's bishop back to f8. But I do just want to say, Yakov missed an even better move here. And this is again on the subject of pawn breaks. All right, so as you get stronger and stronger at the game, pawn breaks. I told you a long time ago, f6 is definitely a move to consider, but there's an even stronger move here for black, and it's a very exotic pawn break. It's very rare to play a move like this, but the move is g5. Destabilizing the one thing that controls the center for white. If you take, you just fall apart. I will take this or this falls. So now this pawn, which suffocated all of the black pieces, now will be captured, and black is just doing really well. And this wall against the light-scored bishop is doing very well also for black. So g5. Now, if you try to defend yourself, that grants black access to a certain square that they didn't have access to before. h4. And this is bad news. And I always try to tell you, pawn moves and pawn breaks change the position, right? So when the move g takes f4 happened for black, what opened? Here's a hint. What opened when both pawns went this way? The kings, right? And black can go king h8, rook g8, and all of a sudden that king's got nothing. And if the king tries to hide, this comes anyway. This comes, right? And white can defend, but it's bad news. I mean, there's tactics flying all over the board, and black is just going to scoop up all the pawns. So another pawn break there is g5, which is a nice idea by black. But he plays the queen trade, Lucy plays b4, and we have the move rook fc8. So rook fc8, targeting the knight and the pawn. White is going to lose a pawn, better to be active than passive, and she plays the move a4. So white is only down a pawn, but doing a nice job here, counterattacking on the queen side. To try to play a5, try to play a6. Maybe knight will go to d6. Here's another idea. Knight into d6 and try to attack that weak pawn here. Black could defend it, but that's extremely passive. And yeah, I mean, Lucy decided to go a4. And now Yakov plays a very well-timed move. He understands that this a5 is coming, but bishop f8 activating yet another piece, sort of justifying the f rook. So we see the level difference, right? Nice coordination of his pieces. Knight back to d4, attacks the rook, but the rook slides right out of the way into a fork. So this is very common. One move attacking move, right? Like, let me attack the rook, but you have to ask yourself, where's the rook going to go? This is a 3-minute game with a massive rating imbalance, so I'm not really too critical. Plus, I love Lucy to death, so, you know, knight d4 is the best move in the world. But you have to be very careful. Before you make a move, you got to go where they're going to go, especially in 10-minute games, right? This is not a 10-minute game, so it attacks both things. And that's exactly what black does, so white has to go full danger levels. Look at this. White decides to go full danger levels. That actually looks like it works. It looks like it does it's a nice little tactic here. So if rook takes d4, then white takes, and the pawn is pinned to the rook. So a nice little idea here. The problem is black has a trick. Black could just do this and scoop up both pawns. But black does this in a flashy way. He takes on b4 and allows rook a7. And the pawn gets really close. But there's a check. And none of this would have been possible unless a long time ago, black played rook fc8. So this is how 2800s play. All right? They immediately attack weaknesses. They try to make moves that affect 2 or 3 pieces at the same time, right? This move affects 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces at the same time. Think about that, right? This move is just taking a pawn, but every move that they make, like this move affects everything. Pawn takes knight, now we take, now white has to make a that affect 2 or 3 pieces at the same time, right? This move affects 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces at the same time. Think about that, right? This move is just taking a pawn, but every move that they make, like this move affects everything. Pawn takes knight, now we take, now white has to make a that affect 2 or 3 pieces at the same time, right? This move affects 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces at the same time. Think about that, right? This move is just taking a pawn, but every move that they make, like this move affects everything. Pawn takes knight, now we take, now white has to make a moves that affect 2 or 3 pieces at the same time, right? This move affects 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces at the same time. Think about that, right? This move is just taking a pawn, but every move that they make, like this move affects everything. Pawn takes knight, now we take, now white has to make a moves that affect 2 or 3 pieces at the same time, right? This move affects 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces at the same time. Think about that, right? This move is just taking a pawn, but every move that they make, like this move affects everything. Pawn takes knight, now we take, now white has to make a moves that affect 2 or 3 pieces at the same time, right? This move affects 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces at the same time. Think about that, right? This move is just taking a pawn, but every move that they make, like this move affects everything. Pawn takes knight, now we take, now white has to make a moves that affect 2 or 3 pieces at the same time, right? This move affects 1, 2, 3,
You are cheating, by the way.
you